do one thing and do it really, really well. Simple, good food, done well. Low budget, really humble, go back to the roots and just cook good food and great great service, lots of smiles, keep the positivity high. And so that was part of the plan.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Before the pandemic, passion projects were a big part of the industry, but often they didn't turn a profit. With the pandemic putting old school hospitality operations into question and a more clearly defined roadmap ahead, will passion projects and bespoke hospitality experiences come to the fore, proliferate and flourish? Jesse McTavish is the co-owner of Bar Elvina in Avalon Beach, New South Wales. Jesse, how are you going?
Very well, thanks, Huck. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us. You've just opened the doors about a week ago of Bar Elvina. What's it been like setting up a venue during this time?
Most people called us crazy straight away. but we had a full mind shift, I think, when we first looked at it and said the only way we can do it is if we plan this really, really well. And so the actual build was planned out really well. We did most of the work ourselves. Went back to real bare bones, venue building, doing everything ourselves, as much trade as we could do ourselves, the trade work, calling in favours from lots of really kind friends and helping us out, and very patient friends. That helped as well, but I think the biggest thing was planning it and looking at numbers and seeing if it was going to be possible at all. And when we went through the numbers and figured that it is a possibility, we could do it, then we had enough confidence to do it, to sign the lease and go for it.
Where did the idea of Bar Elvina originate?
My business partner Andy Emerson and I were doing a quick road trip before the borders shut. We literally got out 2 days before the border shut to Victoria. We were going down to Lake's Entrance to pursue a little project we've got going on the side of making Australian tinned anchovies. And we've been trying to do this for a little bit, which is kind of fun. And the reason why we did that was because someone said we couldn't do it. So we're like, oh, surely we could. And with help from a bunch of people like John Sussman and a few other crew, we got in contact with the Mitchelson family down in Lake's Entrance. So we decided to go a fourth generation anchovy fisherman. So we thought we'd go down and have a visit, go and see them and visit them and talk about this idea. And as we're going down, we stopped at Mallacoota because it's one of my favourite towns. Over the years, I've fished there and surfed there a lot, and really wanted to get back down there after the bushfires and see them and go to the local pub, stay there, spend some money in town, and meet a couple of people I know in town there and just see how they're going. And so we thought we'd stop there for the night and take a boat out in the morning on the lake. And we had a bunch of oysters that John Blanco from Mimosa Rocks gave us on the way through, and we'll sit on the bank of the Mallacoota top lake, and we had some oysters. I caught a little tailor, and we cooked it up over a fire, and we're sitting there eating these oysters and having a Nangara Chardonnay, and we're like, you reckon we could do this in a commercial sense? Do you reckon it would translate, just having good booze and good food again? Is it going to happen again? And we looked at each other and we're like, miss it, all right? We miss it. We miss doing it. We miss being a part of it and that buzz and the stoke we get from making people happy and filling them full of booze and food, you know? And we looked at each other and said, man, we've got to find a place, right? And we sort of shifted our mindset from being, it's all going to change, it's going to be horrible and terrible. We looked at it, well, maybe there's a good opportunity here to reset, restructure, and change the formula of what the old formula was. The old formula wasn't attainable for us. Of huge investment, huge venue. We said, let's just go back to the old school of making a restaurant by a wine bar, with whatever we've got. And so that was the idea. It bred from there. Yeah, it was pretty exciting because we thought about it for quite a while, and obviously then we had to find a site. That's the biggest challenge. Yeah. So then we were looking up northern beaches because I do love Avalon and surfing up that way, and Andy lives there. Yeah, he actually lives around the corner from the bar. And he rang me up one day. He goes, am I going crazy? Is this a good deal? Is this place a good deal? And I was like, let's just go check it out. So we went there and we sat there. We went and visited 5 times, met with the owner of the building. And the 5th time we said, do you mind if we just have a look at ourselves, stay in here for about an hour and a half and just get a feel? And we cracked a bottle of wine again and just sat there drinking wine in this space that just had the bones and the potential that we just couldn't argue with. It was just we knew that if we could do it for the right capital, we're right. We're okay. All the numbers actually added up.
You mentioned that the old school of thinking was a big investment, a larger venue. Can you tell us a bit about this operation? How big is the site? How many people are you expecting to have in the venue, and what sort of outlay and impact is it having on you guys?
We're allowed 65 at the moment under current COVID restrictions, which I was just reading today. Hopefully, we have a bit of a change in New South Wales over this week. So that was really heavily negotiated in the lease. So we negotiated back and forth really heavily to put in basically a COVID clause almost, because it was so unknown. This was 3 months ago that we signed, that was first negotiating, sorry, and we essentially went back to the owner and said, hey, we can't make money unless this is going to happen. It's just not possible. We know the margins in hospo. And he agreed. He's been in hospitality for years and years and years, which really helped. He was incredibly understanding, and he's had restaurants for the last 50 years, so he understood completely, which really helped. He really felt for us. So he offered, if COVID happens again, then we don't pay rent. Simple as that. And he put that straight up in the lease, which is really lovely. And I think that was probably the one that got us over the line. That we knew worst case scenario, the landlord has our back. So that was really kind of encouraging, I suppose. And then so the potential is 120 in the venue, which is fantastic. And there's because it's quite a diverse little venue with a bar, a terrace, a dining room, and then an outside area at the back where the garden's going in a couple of weeks' time. So it's a fun venue, but I think it's having that vision that Andy especially has, and I know how to swing a hammer, so that helped as well. And we sat down and the vision was clear. We both had exactly the same vision of what we wanted it to be, and we knew that we'd only be able to we'd have to scrape in all the favours, call in all the favours. So it's kind of exciting, yeah.
Well, we know that you're a real talent on the tools in the kitchen, and you said you can swing a hammer. But what was it like swinging the hammer? Do you have any stories you can tell?
It was great. Oh, yeah. When you come in, just don't look too closely at the at the banquet seating. I built the banquet, and there's just gaps everywhere. It's awful. Oh my goodness. When COVID first happened, I had a business consulting business. I just started, and I was working overseas. Had 3 contracts lined up in Kuwait City, Bangkok, and Bali, and obviously they all cancelled. So it was pretty wild. But on the plus side, I've got a bunch of mates that are tradies, and they just said, "Well, come and labour for us." So I was roofing for 3 months, which was fantastic. Up on roofs and hanging around on harnesses. It was great fun. I found it so enjoyable. I come home happy, and my fiance Ali was just like, "Man, you come home so happy after labouring." I'm like, "It's so easy. You just you make a mistake, you fix it. It's fine." It's unreal. I really enjoyed it. So I started buying some tools, and I've always liked working on cars and stuff like that. And so no, I don't mind using tools and that, which was great because when Andy Andy rings up and he goes, "We're gonna have to do the work ourselves, eh?" And I said, "Yep." He goes, he goes to me, "I'm terrible with a saw." And I went, "Okay." I said, "No way." I said, "Do you know how to hold a drill?" He goes, "I know how to hold a drill. I just don't know how to turn it on." I was like, "Done. I'll sort it out. I'm your guy. Your admin guy. I'm the tool guy." So it was cool. But yeah, there's a few dodgy bits of workmanship going on in there. Let's just say we've got load-bearing zip ties.
You mentioned that at the beginning of the pandemic, you lost some consulting gigs overseas. What did it feel like at that time, and how do you feel about that? Given that borders are still closed, how do you feel about international travel?
It was hard at the time, definitely. Yeah, it was pretty tough, and thankfully, I was really glad that my partner, with Ali, was still with Solitel. She works with Solitel, and they supported her really well, which is fantastic as a company, and that was encouraging for us and gave us a sense of security. A little with it was hard with the government helps because I was a brand new business, brand new, and didn't have any employees because that's just me. So I didn't actually qualify for JobKeeper. So it was pretty tough, but it was all right. Thankfully, I just had some labouring jobs. But losing those consulting jobs hurt. Thankfully, I was able to do some of it remotely, and we adapted, which was kind of cool. With Q8, I designed each of the dishes, designed a whole menu. It ended up being 42 dishes, and cooked them and photographed them at home, and sent over the photographs, and then sent over videos on instructions of how to cook it, how to cook the dishes, and so that was pretty cool. It was hard work though. It's really hard work. But it was tough trying to get it, and doing it in a domestic kitchen too was a battle. But I called in a few favours again. It was pretty tough.
You've worked for many great restaurants. What led you down the road to consulting?
Um, I think I think it's the enjoyment that you get when you design a menu and train staff, and they see the instant changes. They see the instant change in revenue, and more importantly in the attitude of the kitchen as well. You go in and you come in with this fresh culture, or not culture. You just come in with a fresh attitude and a fresh look at the business, and it really quickly shows anyone in the kitchen who wants to go along with that change, and anyone who doesn't. And so you can get a chance to restructure the culture of a kitchen and reset it. And I love that, going in there and making an impact, making a really positive impact in a business, and then following up and seeing how that goes. And the restaurants or the businesses that I was working with were all family businesses, except the Q8 ones. Sorry, with other family businesses. So they really appreciate it. We have a really close relationship still now with these people, and that really makes it personal for me. And that was really enjoyable, satisfying, really satisfying. And it was without the ongoing stress of doing 70 hours on your feet, because I'm getting old, Huck.
Yeah.
Starting to get a bit old. Having said that, I just did 90 in the wine bar last week, so go figure.
Wow.
Anyway,
What led to a career in hospitality?
I was sitting around the table at home in Lennox Head. We're living on the beach. It was a cracking spot. It's just such a beautiful place to grow up. And we're sitting there. I was in year 10 at school at Byron Bay High School. And I was sitting there with Mum. Actually, I got up and I was making tortillas with Mum. And as you do as a 15-year-old. And Mum goes, "What do you want to do? Do you want to stay on till year 12, or do you want to leave and do a trade?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. I really don't know." And I was thinking about, something to do in teaching art or something like that, or there was an opportunity to go into further a career in drama or in acting, something like that. And I was sitting there, and Mum goes, "What about a chef? What about being a chef?" And I was sitting there rolling it. And I remember, this is being very honest, I thought, "Oh yeah, chicks dig chefs." I promise you, a 15-year-old boy, that's all you're thinking of. And I thought, chicks dig chefs. Little did I know that you would then go and have a relationship and not see the person that you're with for 15 hours of the day. And chicks don't dig chefs sometimes. But, but that's exactly what I thought. So the next day I went up to the beach hotel in Byron and walked into the kitchen. There was an old Spanish chef in there, Valentino, his name was, executive chef of the beach hotel at the time. Before the other crew came in, that's 1995. And I went up there and said, I just want to start an apprenticeship. And he goes, okay, start next week. So I left school and went and did my trade. That was it.
Wow.
Yeah. There should be more career advisors around, I think, just telling 15-year-olds to slow down and think about it first.
You've been involved in many amazing venues over the years, from the Kettle Black to North Bondi Fish and many more in between. What's been some real highlights and influences over your career?
Oh, good question. I really enjoyed that period with Top Paddock and Kettle Black. And I was just saying to Andy yesterday, we've had an amazing opening with Bar Elvina. It's just been, the response has been phenomenal, and I'm just, my mind's blown. And I hadn't felt that since we first opened Top Paddock. I remember looking over at Nathan Tolman on the first day and just went, wow, we've created something special. This is amazing. Of course, that was off the back of a lot of his restaurants and his success that he and Diamond and Ben had already set up, which is full credit to them. But at Top Paddock, just something was different, and the formula was right, and it felt amazing. That feeling felt so good. And I was like, I think I felt that again yesterday. It was a really cool feeling. So that was definitely a highlight. The Top Paddock Kettle Black days were pretty amazing. And prior to that, I remember working with an Italian family in 2000 down at Four Olives Deli, the owners of Fourth Village Providore. And I talk about these guys all the time because they are the loveliest people, and there's no airs, no graces, but they just love good produce. And they were the first people to really drive home the appreciation of good produce for me. And when you're curing your own olives out the back, and cracking green olives and curing black olives out the back of the shop, and he's got his own olive oil press at Pecolban, pulling his own olive oil off a stone press, and he's like, oh, that's what you're talking about. That's real appreciation for good quality produce. And that was a real eye opener. I didn't appreciate it as much as I did at the time, but as I do now. Sorry, but I have seen the guys, Peter and Annette, again recently, and really told them how much I really appreciated them showing me that. It was kind of fun, and of all places, I found it in a deli. Not in a three hatter or anywhere else, just in a humble delicatessen. It's kind of cool.
Can you tell us a bit about your cooking? Was there a moment in time when you realised, yeah, you are a good chef and you found your voice on the plate?
No, not yet. Not yet, mate. People always ask you when they go, so what's your favourite thing to cook? I don't know. People go, so what's your favourite dish you ever cooked? And you're like, I have no idea. Maybe it's a short attention span, but I don't know what it is. I just, it's not a perfectionist thing or anything like that. I get too excited and about stuff, and the beauty about cooking for me is that it's always changing, and it always evolves and develops and changes. And just when you think that everything's been done, you get some sort of tangent that your brain goes on, and you go, oh, cool, yeah, that's it. I'm going to run down that tangent. And like even with Elvina, we've set up a structure for the menu that I like the whole menu to fit into, and it's four principles. One is it's got to be on brand. It's got to look the part. It's got to be, the brand is salty and ocean and coastal. So it's got to be on brand. It's got to have some element in there on brand of local produce. So something out of the sand dunes, something off the beaches, even the seafood out of the Hawkesbury. Second, it's got to be cost effective. Got to make money off it. Third, it's got to work in the kitchen with our limitations of the cooking equipment and the amount of staff we have. But the biggest one, the fourth one, is it's got to be bloody delicious. And it was cool to have that, to categorise that the first time in my career. And the dishes come in, we see if they tick all the boxes, and it's unreal the dishes that are coming out, because you can have a dish that's three moves. It can be literally three moves, but the building blocks of flavour have been developed over weeks and weeks and months sometimes. but the dish is 3 moves because it fits into the kitchen, and it tastes unreal. And you're like, and the guys in the kitchen are pumping this food out at just such precise levels because there's only 2 moves in it. Cooking a flounder perfectly over charcoal, and serving it with sautéed warrigal greens and miso lemon butter sauce. That's it, and it's tasty as. But the miso, obviously, we're making the miso ourselves. Warrigal greens we get out of the garden up at Palm Beach, pull out of the bushes out of Palm Beach, and the flounder through our great supplier at the fish market. Just simple stuff, done well.
One of the identifying features of your cooking is a real love for seafood. Where did that all start from?
My pop, I reckon. My grandfather took me fishing because we lived on the beach at Lennox Head, which is a real tough upbringing, as you can imagine. Just living in paradise. We're such spoilt brats around here, aren't we? It's unbelievable. Growing up literally on the beach at Lennox, and I mean, it's rough times. Of course, it was. Mum and Dad went through some heavy financial challenges, and we were renting on the beach, and 5 kids, 5 annoying kids to feed, and surfboard shaping. Wasn't exactly the most high income earning profession around. But we'd fish over the front most days. We'd surf every day, but we'd walk over the front. There's a little spot there called the Brim Hole and the boat channel, and we'd flick a dirty old, smelly old prawn in there. And my pop would teach me how to catch whiting and flathead and the mighty long tom, which was the first fish that I ever caught. Just horrible things. But I always loved seafood. So then Dad bought me a spear gun early days, so I'd cruise through there and I'd shoot mullet and bream and stuff like that and cook it up. And then that was, and as kids we'd just rummage around on the rocks, always on the rocks and low tide at the boat channel, lift up rocks, find crabs underneath it, grab crabs and see these things scurrying around the rock pools. Just a complete, absolutely infatuated with the ocean. And that just turned more and more into a proper love, I suppose, without saying too cheesy. But it's it really is a love for the ocean. And my days off were, just you go to the beach with a board and a fishing rod, and no bait, never any bait. You find your bait so easily. Walk along, grab some pippies, jump on your board, paddle the board out with your fishing rod, throw the rod in with the pippy on it, paddle back to shore, take away back to shore, leave the bait out there. 5 minutes later, you got a dart or a brim or a tailor, and sometimes the odd dewy. It was unbelievably fun. That was a fairly standard occurrence, and then light a fire on the beach because you could back then. This is only 10 years ago to find you, but you could back then. Light a fire and cook the fish on the fire or whatever else you found. So there'll be nights that I'd go down to Black Rock and paddle across to Black Rock and climb up the rock, fish off it in big swell. And it was a pretty famous mulloway spot, and heaps of tailor. You always come back with a backpack full of tailor. So you're paddling across this big sharky channel on the way back. It was only like 50 meter or maybe a 70 meter paddle, but deep and dark. And you're paddling back to the beach your lineup is the fire. Well, my lineup was the fire on the beach that I have going, and drag it back, and you've got blood pouring out of your backpack. It's kind of funny, and you cop a bit of a wave, and you stack it, and hooks and tackle going everywhere, and then get back to the beach and cook it up. So now sometimes I didn't get in it. That were the fun ones, and I still don't. You ask my fiance, I still don't catch fish, but there'll be some days I paddle over there and there'll be nothing around, and you come back to the fire and you're like, well, I've got to eat something. So I mean, of course I could go home. That's fine too, but you've got to eat something. So I'd walk down and I'd find crabs, these little sand crabs. I've eaten these guys. They're pretty tasty. They get up to an okay size, like maybe like the size of an egg almost. And they'd be a chicken's egg. They'd be running around the beach at night times, and you run around with a torch grabbing them. And I cooked one up and just fried it straight up. It tasted delicious. It was great. But it was just sort of fun, just eating stuff. I've probably got worms I'm probably full of worms at the moment, but I love it. And like periwinkles and they're called apus, little crustaceans that grow on the rocks, look like related to abalone, little baby apu. They're a little delicacy in Hawaii. Just grabbing those off a rock and boiling them up and making a little soup out of them. And good fun, good times.
You mentioned an amazing flounder dish just a few moments ago. Do you have any sort of tips or secrets to cooking seafood? What's your approach?
Yeah, it depends on the seafood for sure. Depends on the species, the variety, and that's where I take the aging of seafood, put it in its place for sure. But it's not the rule that rules all seafood. That's for sure. There's some fish that's just, and some seafood that's just so much better fresh straight away. Absolutely, and you spend 20 years trying to get that and get the best freshest. Sometimes it's nice to have it straight away. But aging with like the swordfish belly, we've got 8 days aging up at the moment at Bar Elvina. The flounder we dry out in front of the fan. Take the scales off, crisp up that skin. There's this, no, and then sometimes don't cook at all. Simple as that. Sometimes it's a blowtorch, sometimes it's a charcoal, sometimes it's a pan, sometimes it's raw. And I think that's where I get excited with the evolution of cooking and eating. Because then someone will come along, a chef will come along and start working in the kitchen and do something completely different. And you're like, that's unreal. That's so cool. That falls in the category, and I wouldn't have thought of that. I think that's the most enjoyable thing about cooking with other people and cooking in general. It's constantly changing.
With your approach to cookery, how important are your relationships with the catchers, growers, and producers?
Yeah, they've been vital. Without them, you don't cook. Simple as that. Without them, you're just another cook. Simple as that. I always pictured ourselves like as chefs. We're glorified middlemen on the way. You know, there's an ingredient. A tomato is grown on a vine, and it's been nurtured by a farmer. And they've taken care of it, made sure there's no bugs on it. I was out here today on my tomatoes, flicking off these caterpillars that are starting to attack it. Caring for it the whole time. You get that tomato, gets carefully placed in a tray, shipped off to the market, to the chef, and then he just ruins it. Or does he continue that process of nurturing it as much as he can, as a good middleman should, and then deliver it to the customer, and deliver it to the end user who really gets to see that care and feel, and it's almost like the soul of that ingredient. I feel like you can see it without, again, sounding a bit cheesy there, but getting a bit deep. but it is. You know that when something's been treated with respect and dignity. You know, when a piece of fish hasn't just been, so a whole fish hasn't been just slapped in a tub. You know, and you get a poor old 25-kilo mulloway in a tiny little seafood box, bent up and battered and bashed, because he's so big and he's awkwardly sitting in this tub, and you're like, wow, you've had a rough trot, haven't you, buddy? Someone hasn't been kind to you. You know, so getting to the supplier, the farmer, the fisherman, talking to those guys and saying what you want out of it, and not accepting it when it doesn't arrive correctly as well. That's, and knowing that you won't put up with average produce. Is really important, because then you have to do less to it. It's purely lazy. You have to do less to it. So it's a purely lazy motive.
You mentioned you were sitting on the beach with Andy when you came up with the idea for the restaurant on your little mission to tin Australian anchovies. How close is Elvina to the vision that you had back then?
I saw glimpses of it 2 nights ago. I said that to Andy. He said that was amazing. We had a great service on Friday night, and it was our first public service. We did 160 covers, and over from lunch, mind you, from midday to 11 p.m. So it's a long service, but so it was spread out really well, just in case there's any COVID officers listening in. Got to cover myself there. And I said to Andy, I was like, mate, I just saw glimpses of what we talked about, and he goes, it's so clear. I was like, it's so satisfying. There were lots of man hugs and high fives and that type of stuff. We had a review, just a comment on Instagram. Sorry, not a review, a comment on Instagram from a customer saying it was so nice to see the team all working together. They looked like they were family. The amount of hugs I saw and the high fives, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And it's not forced or bunged on. We really love working with each other. It's really enjoyable. We've got a really, really good team up there. We've got a core team of 8 people, and we're all absolutely loving it. It's really cool. That vision was that, and the dish our oysters on the menu now are still John's, which is cool. So that was part of the vision. We were down there eating John's oysters, and I had them in some paper bark, and they were on a log smoke. It was really softly smoking them at about 50 degrees, not even just above blood temperature. So you could pick them up, and we're leaving on there for about 5-10 minutes, and so the texture didn't change, just the flavour went from brine to savoury. It was really wild, but without ever tightening the muscle, which was really cool. So we're sitting there having that, and plenty of Chardonnay, of course. And so we're selling those same oysters with some paper bark. So as it goes out the table, we chuck the oyster, take the lid off, flip it, put the lid back on again, just sitting on top, reserving all the liquid, light the paper bark underneath, and the paper bark just sort of oozes through that lid, and you get just a soft touch of smoke just as you go to eat it. So it's not just theatre or anything. It's actually practical, and that's the vision we had back down there. So yeah, it's definitely translated.
What's it been like putting this restaurant together and letting go of some of the old school thoughts on the way restaurants should be run and what sort of investment they should have? How's it felt letting go of that and moving forward with this model?
It's been liberating. It really is. I remember saying to a friend of mine, she said, "What any positives you can see out of COVID?" And I said, "Well, it's probably a really good chance for the industry, the formula to reset, and we can run it our way." I was thinking of, and I'm probably completely wrong in saying this, but I was thinking of countries that have gone through pandemics and through wars, and what their food structure was afterwards, and nearly all of them had the same structure. They do one thing and do it really, really well. Simple, good food done well. Low budget, really humble, go back to the roots and just cook good food and great great service, lots of smiles, keep the positivity high. And so that was part of the plan. We said, let's do a place. We're not after money. We don't want to make squillions of dollars. It's not the plan at all. We just want to have a really nice life and go to work and just have big, happy faces. It's the stress and the headache and the tiny margins just aren't worth, and and the grey hair and the man boobs aren't worth it. It's if you're gonna have grey hair and man boobs, at least have a smile on your face. That was what the reality I came to. So that's what we've decided to do, and that is really liberating. It feels great because there's always a bottom line that we've got to watch out for, but it's not the goal. We're not sitting there chasing money. We just want a really good life, and it's a start of something else. We'll do something else. We'll still do the anchovies. We've got next season. We've got about 8 months to get our bums into gear to get that going. We've had our first test batch, but we've got a little bit of time to get that going until next year, until the next season comes around. So there's other things going on, and we just want to build a place that we want to go to, basically.
I know you've only had a couple of services now, but it is warming up and we're heading into summer. What are your hopes for the summer?
I hope the New South Wales lifts the restrictions, actually. It'd be really nice to see it humming at full pace, especially the standing rule, which I just never really understood. You've already counted the customers when they've walked in the door. They've all had to log in, so I don't understand why you need to sit down to have a drink. It'd be really tough. It's just sort of blown a bit of atmosphere. I miss having a bar 4 deep, and the buzz and the excitement that creates, and it's unreal. So hopefully, I really hope by the end of the year that's lifted. I just want a continuation of what we've started, what we've got going here. and because it feels right, and it's really enjoyable to be a part of. It's really enjoyable, and maybe it is a bit of the absence makes the heart go fonder, of being within a venue and with a group that's all got the same goals and super stoked. And maybe it's just that we have missed the industry so much as well. Maybe it's if we come back with all this, all this excitement and all this time and integrity to put it back into it. I remember going to Dear St. Eloise about 2 weeks ago, and it was just so good to have dinner out again. It was such a good feeling. I nearly cried. It was just like, oh, I remember this. Spoiled brats. It's like, I think we took it all for granted too much.
Well, Jesse, glad to hear that you've got the restaurant up and running, and it really sounds like something that's coming from deep within you and making you really happy. Loved having a chat with you, mate. You're a bloody good laugh and a bloody legend. Please keep in touch, and we'll talk again soon.
For sure. Thanks, Huck. You're a ledge, mate.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.